Good morning, James.
Yes, good morning, Dan.
Very well. Welcome to today's webinar. I will speak at the end of the training, but I want you
Yes.
to start off the training as scheduled. To our
Okay.
participants, I'll add you to be able to participate. So all of you, I'll make you panelists. That way you'll be able to.
You look like you're breaking, Dan. Eh?
It's okay. Put your video on. Very well. Very well. Very well.
All right. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. I can see Christopher. Can see who else? Amos. Amos, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, welcome. Can see Anne. Anne, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I can see Beatrice.
Good morning.
All right. I can see Beatrice. We have who? Wangui.
Good morning.
Harry.
Morning.
Carol.
Okay.
Yes, we have two Carols, Carol M, Carol Mushemi. Good morning. There is Doreen Jerry. Good morning, Doreen.
Good morning.
There is Dr. Kintu Mogeni. Good morning, Dr.
Morning, Mwalimu. Morning.
Then we have, is it Diana? Diana, good morning. We also have George. George, good morning. We also have, who else I've not mentioned? Anybody I've not mentioned? If I've not mentioned, you kindly just say hi to us.
Hi.
Emily, can see Emily Saina there.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Christopher.
Christopher, good morning, Chris.
Good
Jackie
morning,
Okello,
Jackie.
Violet.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. We also have, who else we've not talked to? Maggie, Mag says, good morning all. Good morning, Mag. Okay, so I think everyone, we've been able to reach to everyone. But for those who have not been able to be mentioned, kindly pardon us. You can still chat or say, or just wave to us as we start this session today. There's Sally. Good morning, Harry. Good morning. That's fantastic. So we have, well, yeah, I think we can start our session today. Mag is there. Mag, good morning. Harry Arig is there also. Chris, one way, good. Fine, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first module of performance management. So we'll be handling this. Oh, Milsen, I have screamed good morning, but it appears it's not being heard. We've heard you. Good morning to you, and welcome to our session. Okay, that's Milsen Idaki. Thank you. Right, so ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by welcoming you to this session. We'll be doing this module today and tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to a very engaging and informative session so that as we delve into this concept of performance management, then we should be alive to the fact that there's a lot of changes in the world of work. I believe even as we are seated, some of us are working, could be you've logged in from home, right? Yeah, you're working from home, and that's the new normal that we are in. So as much as we may want to say that COVID has affected us adversely, but also I think it has challenged our minds into becoming more innovative. And one of the innovation things is us being able to handle these meetings online or having trainings online. And I believe even at workplace, we are holding all these meetings. We are monitoring our guys. We are engaging with colleagues online, which is actually the true fact of the situation at hand. So as Dan mentioned, I'll be taking you through this module today and tomorrow. And can just say welcome and let us engage as we start this. Sheila also is there, says good morning. We can't hear you, sir. Sheila says she can't hear me. I don't know who else has a similar problem. Are we having a similar problem? Am I audible?
Can hear you.
Can hear you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can hear you too well.
All right. That's perfect. So thank you for acknowledging that. Perhaps maybe, Sheila, you can try your mic and see whether there is any connectivity that you need to work on.
Maybe
so
she has muted. She has muted the sound.
Yeah, maybe as
Microphone.
Yeah, you know, these technological changes. Sometimes somebody will say they're not hearing, only to realize that they have actually muted. Okay, good. So let's engage. So we'll start with our first part of the module. So I've divided this into two modules. The first bit that has 6 topical areas of discussion, and the second one that also has 6. So perhaps usually with the trainings, we normally start with the expectations. So perhaps within 5 minutes, I would just want to note down your expectations for this training on performance management, so that at the end of it, we are able to ascertain whether we've met those expectations or we've not. So what we can do is we'll be using the chat section and also the Q&A to just highlight our expectations. But for those ones who are able to, who have the video on, you can just mention to us what are your expectations for this training. So I'll not be using any format. I'll not go with any order, but it will be just a random kind of call. So you just start, you just say who you are, then you tell us your expectation for this training today. So it's an open floor, and let's start.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
To Malemo and Dan and his team. expectation today is especially on the evaluation of performance during this period of COVID-19, whereby most of the workforce are working from home. And
yes.
all from it's almost 6 months now
Yes.
in COVID era, and if an employer has been away for 6 months, like the government directive, whereby 58-year-old, 59, and those with medical conditions, they should be away. Now they are just been away for almost half of part of the year. How do you measure performance? How do you set the target for those people? For example, where I work, Mombasa Water, over 60 staff out of 340 are at home. That's a big percentage. How now do you make the percentage performance of such people? That's my expectation.
Thank you, Amos. Thank you, Amos, for that. Yeah, it's a fact actually that we have that challenge. And if you're talking about 60 people, that's a huge number. Thank you for that sentiment. Next, anybody, another person with the expectation, because him is about evaluation of performance with regard to people who are now to work from home, that we've been working from home for 6 months now. And it's a situation that is likely to persist beyond the 6 months. Good. Next.
This is Sally. Morning, everyone. Just in addition to what has been mentioned, and looking at the different generations we have in the workplace, I'm hoping we'll be able to look at the best practice in performance management, because we have different age groups, and you find there are those who resist maybe new ways of handling performance, where it's something continuous, as opposed to something almost quote unquote disciplinary. So I hope we'll be able to have such discussions as we move along.
Lovely. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Sally, about the generational differences and how do we ensure that we optimize on the best practices. Next. Okay, I can see my expectation is how to effectively automate the performance management process. That is from Lucy, automation. Thank you. Patrick says, sharpening skills on setting smart objectives. Smart objectives, that's Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. So Patrick wants to hone the skills in setting smart objectives. Okay, Millicent, high levels of productivity.
Okay, mine.
Yes.
Yeah, Christopher.
Yes.
Mine is to find out the best performance management techniques, especially during this COVID-19 time.
Yes.
And also one that works best in an hospital setup, because I'm currently working in an hospital.
Okay, Chris works. So you're looking at the hospital setting.
Yes, the best performance technique that can be used.
You can use that to ensure that you're able to capture the performance levels. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Welcome.
Okay, mine. Can I go ahead?
Yes, George.
Mine is why should we bother ourselves about performance management?
Why performance management, isn't it?
Yes, and
okay, thank you, George. Another one?
What is the difference between performance management and productivity?
Performance management and productivity.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Jackie says, familiarize with best practices. Jackie, we appreciate you want to familiarize yourself with the best practices in performance. Thank you very much. Best practices. Thank you.
Mine is,
yes,
can
Catherine?
I go on?
Yes.
For me, in terms of performance management, I'd like to know how we would make this process more objective and not subjective, because I know the people who are doing performance management are like the managers, and at the end of the day, they're still human. So
Yeah.
how do we make it more about the job and not the person or the relationship between manager and employee? I'd want to see how we can make an objective process.
Fantastic. That's Catherine. Catherine is more focused on how do we make this process objective so that we actually limit those factors that make the process biased. So you're just looking at the objectivity with regard to performance management. Thank you, Catherine. Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Beatrice Amugune. My expectation is on the key performance indicators, to know more on the key performance indicators, and also I expect to be given a certificate out of this training. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a nice one. Beatrice is looking at the KPIs as well as getting a certificate to ascertain or to confirm that she's gone through this training.
Yes.
Good. I think that one is something that I think most of us have not thought of that. The certificate is also very key to actually prove that you've gone through the process or you've gone through these areas, and we can be able actually to measure that. Because of course, we normally say that the best way to manage something is to measure it. So even as you manage your career, you must be able to measure your progress. And one of them is to look at what sort of trainings have you undergone and do they have any impact in your career trajectory. Thank you very much, Beatrice. Harry, I saw your comment. Harry says best practices as well as why performance management. He wants to know whether whatever they're doing at workplace is the right thing. Good. Right. I think this, unless if there's anybody else, I think this gives us a projection on what our intention is, so that as we delve into this conversation, then we should border our discussions around finding solutions to these challenges. And what I'll be doing is I'll be expecting us to share, because it could be that you have a challenge in let's say smart objectives, but we have another colleague or another professional on this platform who has been able to do this successfully. So I'll be calling upon each one of us to share these experiences, because knowledge in this era is very key. And we can also learn this knowledge. And the best way to learn knowledge actually is through other people, because this is more of the sort of implicit knowledge. You know, there's that knowledge that you get from the books where you can read. But when it comes to experiences, I think that's the best way to grow our wealth of experience, and also to devise ways of handling situations that befall us. And a good example will be now the current situation where we are now in COVID. You know, everyone is trying to see how well can we handle this situation. For example, how do I engage people? I've been seeing a lot of conversations around on the platforms where people are asking, how do we engage our guys? How do we ensure that we are monitoring their productivity? How do we ensure that they are constantly feeling motivated? So all those are the questions that we are grappling with, and they're not unique to anyone. Actually, it's those are questions that we must be alive to that, and we need to seek ways of making it happen within ourselves. So allow me to start sharing my screen as we start. All right, so just confirm whether you can see my screen.
I can see the screen, James.
Thank you. So
yes, I can also see.
Good. So as we look at that, you can see in my first slide, I have some pictures or some photos that tend to speak to the concept of performance management, and it also handles, or it tends to focus its direction to what we've mentioned as our expectations. For example, improvement. We are just looking at efficiency, the scope, the time, the goals. Then on the other side, you can see we are looking at people moving towards, or a team moving towards a particular level. So if we look at the interpretation, somebody will think, if you're talking about performance, are we guided by the time? The scope is basically like the SMART objectives that I think Patrick raised. Then we are looking at improvement is basically why do we carry out performance? And the same can be married with having the KPIs. Now KPIs comes hand in hand with the goals, because of course you must set your goals and say, within this period of time, this is what I would wish to attain. Then generally on efficiency is where sometimes we ask, you have 10 people. Can that work be done by 5 people? Can they be done by 3 people? And we talk about efficiency, then one of the questions I've had, in fact, currently when you look at literature, when you look at what companies are doing, they're actually grappling with whether they can, do they really need the space that they have? Can they have people working from home? And currently, in fact, most of the consulting work is that you're getting organizations asking, can we have people working from home? How do we go about having a balance between work from home and workplace? I've seen companies that have completely relocated their staff from the office. They've even offered their seats. In fact, you carry your seat and your desk to your house just to ensure that you have the work environment. Though the challenge has been, do we have the right environment where we stay? Because now when it comes to housing, then you find that becomes a challenge. Because at times the workplace is more conducive and provides more ambience for you to focus on your goals. But now with working from home, you find that there are other myriad of challenges that come with it. And that's what we as professionals, we need to then we'll also be looking at the process of performance management. Then we look at the key to performance management. That means when we talk about the key to performance management is what makes performance management realizable, what makes it effective, what makes it to meet expectations, what makes it to meet the organizational goals, what makes it to meet the vision, not only of the individual, but also of the organization. Then at the end of this session, today's sessions, then we'll be able to also to distinguish between performance appraisal and performance management. Because in most cases, we need to know, if you're looking at the individual, then what is performance appraisal vis-a-vis the management? And management from the general perspective is planning, coordinating, controlling, and all that. But then when you put in the performance, then you realize that now an appraisal becomes one of the tools or the systems that can be used now to have or to realize the management beat. So the same way we look at management is how we'll be able to perceive this concept from the onset. Right. So as an introduction, we just want to look at this case of Helios Inclusive that has several employees working across different departments. Then this Helios has been recording decreasing productivity or performance. And upon auditing, they found out that there was low performance across many of the departments. So in this case, then, can we say that Helios could have easily used an effective performance management system to monitor and manage performance of its workforce? That becomes a question. Is it that they don't have an effective performance management system, or is the problem beyond the performance management system? Then, if that's the question, then our answer would be: is it an important tool to have a performance management system for our organizations? So this case of Helios could be a typical example of where we are, because as we've said, if people are working from home, others are working from the office, then how are we going to manage that performance? You'll agree with me that there's no company that has made profit this year, apart from the tech companies which have ventured into the online system. But all other companies that were more inclined towards the physical linkages and also linking to practice and all that, they have actually been affected adversely. So that's resonates very well with this challenge that Helios is having. So we need to ask ourselves today, what could be the problem with our performance management? Because you may have that system, it used to work before COVID. But now during COVID, how do you manipulate it? How do you amend it to capture these challenges, the disruption that have been brought about by COVID? And remember, this disruption is not about just people working from home, but then how do you even track their performance? How do you track their contribution towards the organization now that you're not meeting people? And you know, it's like right now we are looking at not even just 6 months. We have companies that started working from home from March. If it's March, then how many months are we talking about? 8 months, isn't it? 8 to 9 months. So you can see the magnitude of that effect to the organization. And our question would be, how do we navigate this? What solution can we have to stay afloat with the competition? Because remember, there are so many even companies that have closed down. And they have closed down because of the financial constraint, because if, for example, you are more of customer facing, then you had to completely close down. If you're dealing with customers, if you're dealing with, for example, institutions, both from the school level to university that have adversely been affected. We have the industry, the social industry that also been affected greatly. So those are the questions that we ought to ask ourselves. Now, coming to the definition of performance management, I have a number of these two definitions which I want us to look at and just think whether they actually make sense with regard to where we are. So from this definition that we have, there is that definition where we're saying it's systematically managing people in the organization for innovation, goal focus, productivity, and satisfaction. Systematically managing the people for innovation, goal focus, productivity, and satisfaction. Now, if you look at this definition, it has these other components of innovation, goal focus, productivity, and satisfaction. Apparently, some of our systems or the performance management process has normally, or it has always focused more on productivity and maybe goals, but it tends to negate the concept of satisfaction and innovation. But with the COVID-19, in fact, the focus has been more on innovation. And I believe we'll be able to share that from where we sit. How have we been able to innovate or come up with innovative ways of working? How have we had innovative ways of dealing with people? And also how we have innovative ways of ensuring that performance is not hampered by this COVID-19. Hence, the approach to management of performance is using planned goals and objectives, the measurement, the feedback, and cognition to motivate people. Remember, there's one component of measurement. And I've mentioned before that you cannot manage without measurement, meaning you must have defined projection within yourself. Just the same way, socially, we had our own goals for 2020. And all these goals, I know currently we'll be saying that because of COVID, we could not attain them. But year in, year out, we have our own set of goals. At the end of the year, we need to ask ourselves, what percentage have we achieved? And you can only do that if you're able to measure it. And you can only measure it if also you had a criteria within which you have those indicators clearly outlined. If you don't have that, then you'll not achieve your planned goals and objectives. And more importantly, look at the concept of recognition to motivate people so that they maximize or to realize their maximum potential. In the current world of work, it's not a secret that we have had a paradigm shift from administrative way of dealing with people to more of development oriented. So want to focus more on how do I elevate you? After realizing that Sally has this kind of potential, how do I motivate her? Or how do I develop her to ensure that we get the maximum potential from her? And that cannot also go without discussing the issue of even identifying what this potential is. And you can only identify this potential if you are well versed with the emotional intelligence. So with that emotional recognition, then that's when now you're looking at the what people have instead of what they do. What do they have? So that we do not just narrow our minds towards, after you employ somebody, you just want to see, are they performing? But you must look at outside that box. Can this person still be more valuable? Can they be more utilized in a particular area, in a particular department, so that we do not also destroy this innovation? I've seen companies that whenever they do the induction, they're able to identify that actually James was not fit for this position, but he actually fits well in another position in another department, and they do that to do the redeployment, and it has worked very well. Instead of dismissing somebody and saying that you've not met the requirements and therefore we no longer need to have you on board. And that goes hand in hand when it comes to even when people complain that you're being biased in performance process or measurement process. It boils down to you not having those future-proof sort of techniques to ensure that you are able to balance the kind of work that you're looking at. So this performance management, from that aspect of systematic, maybe just to take you back here, I talked about systematic years. Innovation goals, focus, productivity, and satisfaction. For us to understand that, then we must have this sort of integration. We must have the vertical integration, must have integration with the goals, the human resource, and the functional aspect of integration. Now, what do I mean by these forms of integration? If you look at vertical, I just want you to envisage vertical. That means we have the apex and we have the lower level. Now, the apex denotes what? The vision of the company, or it denotes the goals of the organization. Then that goal, the strategic goal of the organization, must be supported by the functional what? Objectives and goals. We also have the human resource, because you cannot dream of building a global company without looking at how many functions will be able to support that global company. What will be the goals of each of these functions? Then also, how do you want to embed the goals of the human resource to achieve the vertical or to achieve the overall goal of the organization? So those are some of the issues that we need to put in our plan as we chart the way forward for performance management. So as I've said, the vertical is the overall goal. Then we are looking at how do functions tend to support that vertical organization. And perhaps to make it a bit easier to interpret, just look at the vision of the company. If you want to be a global company, then what goals do you wish to have? Because by globalization, then you must be looking at globally. That means you want to operate with the global guidelines. So it means that even your goals will not be limited to Kenya. You'll not be talking about expanding to the counties in Kenya, but you'll be looking at expanding your market share within the globe. So you'll be looking at your presence in Africa, you'll be looking at your presence in Asia, you'll be looking at your presence in Europe, Middle East, and all that. So that in itself will trigger your goals, so that, remember, in each of those geographical locations, your goals will be to meet or to satisfy the needs of the market. And you'll find that the needs will be different. Even the kind of people that you face will be different. If you look at the geographical, we talk about the geographical description of cultures. With the different geographical locations, of course, you expect different cultures. There are people whose dispositions with regard to work will be different. There are people whose disposition towards motivational elements will be different. Remember, we are dealing with different cultures. If you go to China, for example, they are more inclined towards the power distance compared to US. If you look at Kenya, we have companies that are more inclined towards a hierarchical way. That's a power distance, where it's more hierarchical for you to go through a process. It's hierarchical for recruitment, hierarchical for you to be assessed to your performance and all that, compared to the cultures whereby it's more of, you're looking at the individual versus the team, or you're looking at a more vertical, what do you call it? A more reduction in terms of the vertical sort of hierarchy. So all that should actually be concepts that will inform you to determine how you're going to deal with the people. Now, right now, there was somebody mentioned about having, because of the COVID restrictions, you have people who are working from home. They're above 58 years. Now, that's the human resource concept. Then you have the generations. Maybe you have the entry-level staff who, for them, for example, they are very flexible. They prefer working from home. They are techno-savvy, meaning with technology, they don't have any big problem. But then you have this crop of very experienced employees, but now they have to work from home. And remember, they're not very well versed with technology. So your question would be, first, how do I bring them to fit into the current environment before, because now you expect them to fit fast, before now you're able to monitor their performance. So, and that's what we need to look at as we interrogate this aspect of the functions, the verticality of the organization, as well as the goals and the human resource. So in a general view, then performance management is a strategic approach which is integrated to deliver what we call a sustained success. And this sustained success is anchored on the need to improve performance of the people who work in them, and by developing the capabilities of teams and individual contributors. Take note of the word strategic and integrated. Strategic and integrated. Now, let me ask a question. Let me just pose a question here. How do we define the word strategic? Or how do we become strategic? Or have we just visualized being strategic is vis-a-vis just being a process? as well as now the integrated approach. What do you mean by this integration? What do you mean by strategic? And I would request that we just have some responses from the platform. What is your view? What do you think is this? What is strategic in your view, and what is integrated approach with regard to this performance management? Because we've talked about those I've mentioned in the previous slide, but then what is being strategic? Any view? What is to be strategic? You can chat, you can unmute yourself and just tell us or share with us what is strategic and integrated approach.
Okay, I can try.
Right.
To be strategic, you have to be to identify the long-term goals of your organization, and to be integrative, maybe you integrate by using other maybe departments.
Yes.
To come up with this strategy, the long-term or overall aim of the organization.
Okay. So you're looking at the long term, that's to be strategic, isn't it?
Yes.
Then you're looking at incorporating others. So
yes.
What you is that as you look at the long term, you must ensure that you carry along or you integrate other or you bring together or incorporate other support or other components that will make you reach that position, isn't it? I think that's what you meant. Then we have Terry saying strategic is specific while integrated is intertwined, right? Jackie says well-structured with measured specific goals. That's being strategic. Right. Patrick says long-term and bringing everyone on board. Long-term and bringing everyone on board. Good. So keep commenting on that so that we understand what we mean by strategy. But I want to take that concept from, you didn't mention your name? About the...
I am Saina.
Okay. Yeah, so when you look at strategic, it's more of standing on top of a building and looking far from where you are. And when you look at this, the reason why we call the topmost level of the organization being strategic is because they should be looking far off. So when they look far off, then they're able to guide us that can we take this direction? Just like when you go to war, the commander is expected to be seeing farther than the rest. And that now requires somebody to be very determined and very focused to be able to identify and say that actually this is the safest way to go. And that's where the concept of strategy comes in. So in other words, a strategy is putting vision that guides the process. So that vision is what guides the process. And this process now consists of this other myriad of activities. And therefore you cannot succeed as an organization without the components of the organization, where we have now the resources, we have the people, we have the finances, we have technology and all that. We have the culture and all other factors that we may talk about. So in this case, and I want to appreciate those sentiments, is that we must look at what is this specific goal that we want to attain. You've all been hearing about this discussion, the current discussion about, for example, blaming, you've seen even in US, you've seen in Kenya, the issues of COVID-19. And we're asking ourselves, who do we blame when it comes to dealing with these issues? Do we blame the decision makers? Do we blame the cabinet secretary? Do we blame the government for not ensuring that it brings everyone on board to fight this pandemic? Or do we blame the individuals? And that's why now the question of, have the people bought that concept? You can be a very very brilliant person or leader. You have this just mind-boggling strategies. But then if you don't have the buy-in from the people, then that strategy just becomes a pipe dream. And that's what we need to feel, to think of as we discuss about this strategy. So that you cannot blame your boss, you cannot blame your CEO. The question will be, if the CEO came up with this direction, or now you've been telling people that we need to be innovative, we need to change to technology, how have you prepared these people so that they join you in the direction that you want them to? And how are you dealing with those dissenting voices? Because you must be alive to the fact that dissenting voices will be there. There's no way you'll have a one-way sort of thinking. There'll be those dissenting voices, but how do you ensure that the dissenting voices do not grapple or do not curtail your process of leading the rest? And that brings us to the second bit of the discussion, which is now the elements of the performance management system. What does it constitute? So these elements are mainly three. And the first one is what we call a compensation philosophy statement. We may have or we may not have in the organization, but that is what we need to have, a compensation philosophy statement. Then we have now the program. Most of us only have the program. Then we have this formal audit or success rating overview on an annual or periodic basis with disclosure of results to management. So what do you mean by a formal compensation philosophy statement? This is a philosophy statement that will make you to be regarded as fair, as objective, and being able to offer competitive compensation. But the most important thing, we are looking at what? Fairness, consistent, and industry competitiveness. This is what we use to, or this is what will make you to say, I prefer working for company A, B, or company C, because you are driven by the perception you've had about that organization. You are driven by what you heard about that organization. You're driven by the message that's out there about the compensation what? Philosophy. And that's what tends to attract, that tends to motivate and retain qualified employees. So when that statement is clearly embedded in our minds, then it positions itself in our minds and makes us to feel that this is the best workplace to be. There are a number of factors that we can always raise. People can discuss them and say, I think I like my employer because of one, I would like to continue working here, or I will advise other people to do what? To join into this organization. Now that brings in the issue of what? Of that intent to work for that company. And if your intention is to work for it, then there has to be a drive for you to work for that company. So that's where this compensation philosophy statement comes in handy. Now, another thing that we need to ask ourselves is, now with the philosophy statement, then how are these programs resonating with it? When we have these programs then, because so that we don't have a statement that differs with the program's implementation. And we'll be looking at that when you look at this overall strategy administration program, which should be aligned to the compensation philosophy statement. What do I mean by this? You should not be bragging yourself to be the best employer offering the best competitive package, but in reality, we find that whatever you have is contrary to it. And we are finding people complaining and leaving the organization. Because if you have a very attractive and a very competitive compensation, then you don't expect you to have a lot of attrition with regard to, or people leaving because they are feeling dissatisfied. But you must be able to define your process of retaining these people. Can you attribute that to a clear or a watertight proof aspect when now you're managing their performance, their needs, as well as the capabilities that they have? So to achieve that, then the company is supposed to adhere to the laws and regulations regarding job classification. You're looking at the amount of pay, equitable compensatory treatment of employees. quite often, or more often than not, and I stand to be corrected here, even as we are seated here, in one way or another, we feel that maybe our compensation program is not just, or our compensation program is not equitably administered where we are. Because you hear people saying, how come this department or this department, the classifications of jobs does not tally with the other department? And you'll find that there's a lot of that feeling of unequal treatment with regards to that. But the ideal situation here is that we should have a salary administration program that is performance driven. And if you look at that, then we'll be looking at, are we able to monitor the progress of people? Are we able to reward their efforts? Are we able to ensure that the right procedures are being used and also the innovative ways being taken care of? The second element, which I've already alluded to, is now the salary administration program. Now, this entails the various job evaluations that we have. Now, when it comes to job evaluations, and maybe this I'll ask the members to tell us, how often should you carry out job evaluations? Or from where you sit, how often have you done these job evaluations? If you work in your organization for some time, then what is the policy on that? Or have you just dealt with the job evaluations that were done way back? Are they still relevant from your point of view? And I would request that we share that, we share some comments on that. What is the best, or how, or when, or how often should job evaluations be done? Or have you done it from your organization? Do you think it is the right way? What sort of limitations do you think has come by this job evaluation? Because it marries very well with the issue of the compensation philosophy. So I'll welcome comments on that. 3 comments, then we proceed. When is the last time your organization carried out a job evaluation? And do you think that job evaluation structure that is there, do you believe is effective? Is it? Yeah.
We've actually just finished, because I work in parts government. So we've actually just finished the job evaluation. We have 4-year cycles. So it's done every 4 years because, again, because of the cost implication it may have. Yes. In my opinion, I think that's good enough, at least to enable us to budget, just in case there are any compensations, effects. So yeah, we do it every 4 years as cycles.
Okay, thank you. That is who?
Sally.
Sally, yes, Sally, the organization, they do it after 4 years. So that means within the 4 years, your previous job evaluation will have been effectively been executed. Then now you have another round of 4 years. Thank you, Sally, for sharing. Anybody else with a different, or where they do it differently? Because we just want to see the comparisons and look at, can we say that this is the best way? Okay, I can see a chat here from Night Nzovu says they do it after 3 years. So Night, they do it after 3 years. Okay. Patrick talks about, okay, Patrick, I think you are giving your opinion, that my view is yours is 3 years. All right. Anybody else? Now, those ones who have not experienced job evaluation, maybe if you feel that in your organization there has been nothing like that, then also you need to share with us. And how is that taking place? How are you feeling about it now that there's completely no job evaluation? Anybody else who have not done it? Okay, so I'm assuming it could be between 3 years and 4 years, or maybe where we've worked, because now also sometimes the question is maybe how long have you worked in that organization, and maybe you're not very alive to those policies. Well, now when it comes to job evaluation, the reason behind it being effective is that things change over time, and therefore there is need to do a job evaluation. There are some jobs that completely have to be merged, others have to disappear, and all that. And that's what necessitates job evaluation process to take place. And remember, with the changes also in the labor market, the changes in we are experiencing a lot of mergers, acquisitions, redundancies, and all that. So that's what informs job evaluations. Then, so I may not say that there's a specific one, but it depends with. If an organization runs it for 4 years, for example, it must ensure that within those 4 years, it has implemented the recommendations in the first or in the previous job evaluation. Otherwise, you will not introduce another one, or it will become a lot of troublesome now for you to implement or to have another job evaluation, yet you have already pending programs under the previous job evaluation. Then, and also remember, it's tailored to the strategic vision of the organization, because anytime if you're reviewing your strategic plan, then it also has to go hand in hand with the job evaluation. Additionally, that's what organizations have adopted, that they do it every time you are reviewing your strategic plan, then it also boils down to your change in the job processes or evaluations. Then we have these performance appraisals. Then we have pay for performance salary programs, group incentive plans, individual incentive plans, we have reward programs and compensation communications. So all these are things that make up the salary admin program. Now, when it comes to the audit, and this is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to audit, we need to look at, or our main concentration will be when we do our assessment, when you measure the performance, then how do we communicate these results? How do we disclose the results? And how objective are these results, so that we are now able to build instead of to destroy? We need to look at building. We need to look at developing. We need to look at identifying the strength and building the strength, and also minimizing the weaknesses that have arisen from this process. So then this is where I think one of us was talking about how do we ensure that was Catherine, that the result, the end result is as objective as possible. So we need to look at from the start, how did you communicate? Did people understand what you're going to do? And we'll be looking at that when it comes to the process of performance management, so that we are, it makes us to communicate or understand what our expectations are. So that brings us to the principles of performance management. So when you look at the previous slide, where you're looking at the elements, where we talked about the philosophy, we looked at the salary administration programs and the results, then these informs, or they're actually determined by these principles. And these principles, one of them is that when you carry out performance management, then we are doing it to support the business-oriented strategy. Business-oriented strategy. By business-oriented strategy, I mean that vision of the company, that goal of the company is what you're working or you're managing performance towards. So you cannot claim that you're working towards the success of the company without necessarily being guided by the overall strategy. If you recall, I talked about the vertical integration. So the vertical integration ensures that whatever direction the company is heading to, we must have the supporting elements down here. The supporting elements will be basically the people. Are we having the right people to drive this business-oriented strategy? So that you don't have just human resource, but you don't have them integrated with the performance of that, with the main goal of that organization. When you look at this concept is more on strategic HR. And I like that the definition of where we say the vision. So if you are looking at growing or being technologically a leading company in technology or a market leader, for example, then the question you ask yourself, do I have the necessary arsenal? Do I have the necessary ammunition to achieve that? And this ammunition can be in terms of the finances, in terms of the leadership, in terms of the culture, in terms of the people, and also the technology. Are you able to integrate these? Because we talked about integration. You cannot brag to become a global leader when you are actually lagging behind in terms of technology. Because how can you reach out to the market, to the world? How will the world know about you if you are lagging behind in what? In technology. When it comes to the people, the caliber of people that you'll have, of course, they should be speaking that language of globalization. You cannot claim to get to that point when you hardly are able to get to that, or you don't have people with that mindset of global approach. So when people we are living locally, but we need to think what? Globally. And that's where we bring in the concept of localization. So we have the global, then you're looking at localization. Are we together on that? This actually applies to when you're having a phone that is that enables you to enjoy all those features. You're having it in Kenya, but you are actually using it from the local perspective, but it's giving you a global what? Perspective. The same way is where now we look at performance management, making us to reach to those echelons of success. Then another principle is that it is supposed to be value-based. Performance management should be value-based. So you must have your values correct. If you're looking at professionalism, you must, if you're looking at integrity, if you're looking at customer-centered and all that, then your performance management should be anchored on those values. Because it's all on those values that you're able now to propel yourself to performance. Then it must communicate the mission of the organization. You must have that mission being communicated. And why do we talk about the mission being communicated? Because it's from the mission that we have the objectives. If you say, I want to complete my program, I want to, like now, I know most of us in the profession, we are trying to say, I want to have attended these programs by the end of the year. Now, having that plan of these programs is what informs you now to say, for me to achieve my 10 CPD points, I'll have attended 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, those are the objectives. Meaning, the end justifies your means. Whatever you're going through now to achieve that will be determined by where your eye is. What are you looking at? So whatever you're looking at is now what will propel you to say, I need to put this in place. I need to enroll for this program. I need to have this projection. And that's what enables you now to be driven towards achieving that. Another point is that it fulfills responsibilities to organizational members. It must fulfill responsibilities to the members. Now, these responsibilities basically deal with what? You as a supervisor, you as an employee, what are your responsibilities towards the organizational what? Performance. What do you do? In that level that you are, what is your contribution towards the overall organization? And that's why we celebrate and say, this year we've achieved or this year we've not achieved. It's because of each person's individual responsibilities. And you find that whenever the company succeeds, there's no way a company can succeed when people failed. And that's why we are talking about the sum of these. We must see the efforts of the people is what will make the organization to be at that higher level. Another one is that it enables employees to manage own performance. Now, I don't know whether most of us have this. Anytime instead of just relying on your supervisor to give you the performance rating, have you ever put your targets for yourself and you keep on saying that I think this year I'm doing better or this year I'm doing worse and I need to up my game. That's a question that you need to ask yourself. Then another principle is that it manages expectations, because you're able to know what are my expectations as an individual. As James, for example, what are the expectations with regard to this work? What are the expectations of my supervisor towards me? What are the expectations of the organization towards my responsibilities? Then it creates partnership between management and employees. Now, talking about partnership, it now boils down to the contract between you and the organization. If the contract between you and the organization is not upheld, then you find that that partnership will not exist. Because you are in that organization with the sole purpose of you meeting your needs as an employee, but at the same time, you're also enabling the organization to achieve its needs. That's where this partnership comes in. Then at the same time, it also emphasizes the importance of performance, feedback, and reinforcement. So performance must emphasize measuring, because you cannot manage what you don't measure. You can also not manage if there's no feedback. Now, feedback is about the results. When people have been performing, when you're monitoring them, how often do you give their feedback? What sort of feedback do you provide? How do you provide that feedback? Okay, and also the reinforcement. How do you do the reinforcement? Are you that person who will always dismiss? We have people who are always dismissive. They'll say, even if somebody has achieved, you don't have that courtesy to just say, well done, or keep up the spirit. We have people who always say, okay, that's what you're supposed to have done. Must I acknowledge that? Or you're supposed to do this, it's your role, so you don't expect me to acknowledge. Not understanding that in anything that we do, there is that reinforcement. We need to have the positive reinforcement. If there is also the negative reinforcement, let us see how does the reinforcement make people now to realize that they have made mistakes, and therefore they need to work on those mistakes. So that becomes a very key component or an imperative aspect of the principles of performance management. Then now it also needs to empower employees. Now, talking about empowerment, and this I want to take you back to the expectations. When you talk about empowering employees, are we talking about giving them the freedom to make decisions? Are you looking at listening to their opinions? Are you making them to have autonomy in work? Are you looking at the responsibility that they have? Or what are you looking at when it comes to empowerment? Because empowerment takes different trajectories. It has different interpretations from the angle that you are sitting. But ideally, when it comes to performance management, we are looking at employees being part and parcel of the goals. When you are determining the goals, then they should actually be in the picture. They should be part of that process, so that you don't impose some goals to me. You don't impose those targets to me, because when you impose them, I'm not going to actually work towards achieving them, because I'll feel that it is being forced down my throat. But if I participated in the joint definition of those goals or coming up with the plans, the same way when we do the appraisals, when we come up with new KPIs, do we discuss these KPIs? Or do we just develop them and we say, look at these KPIs, we want to send them up? So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves when it comes to empowerment. Because let me ask you, if you want to go to Mombasa Road today, how many routes do we have towards Mombasa Road? And maybe you agree that I want you to be in, no, not Mombasa Road, I want you to be at the airport, for example. I want you to be at the airport at 11. So not everyone will go through Mombasa Road. Some people will go through other routes, but provided they get to the destination at the stipulated time, that's where we are talking about empowerment. Meaning, let us not be the micromanagers when it comes to performance. let's give these people the right environment. Let us coach them. Let us support them so that they achieve what they want. Okay. So I know there are people who are we have these people, maybe when they supervise you, you'll feel the heat every time because they'll tell you, no, I want you to put a comma on this one. I don't want this comma here. I want you to use this form or this approach. I want you to use this method and all that. So all that tends to affect the manner in which this empowerment works. But it's basically giving that people that autonomy to actually contribute or make decisions regarding their work. Now, these are the questions that we've already asked ourselves. Why do we assess performance? What is it that we are going to assess? How do we assess that? Who should assess performance? When do we assess performance? How do we communicate the performance assessment? So these are the tough questions that inform this performance management process. How do we assess? What is it that we are assessing, and how do we communicate the assessment? Now, to ensure that the objectives are properly defined, we must answer those questions in this way. For example, does the statement of performance targets limit the results to one specific area? Or two, are the results well defined in terms of what is expected of the job holder? Or are the objectives measurable and observable? Were these objectives quantifiable whenever possible? Was the time frame specific? Because now this is where we talk about the SMART. Then are these performance targets reasonable? Are they reasonable when it comes to, as we look at these questions? Are they reasonable? How do we communicate those results? And we'll be looking at that in the next slide on the objectives, or why do we carry out performance management? So one of the reasons which now answers these other questions, why assess performance, what is it that you are going to assess, is now handled under this slide. So we are looking at one of the objectives why we do this performance management is to do what? To review the performance of the employees over a given period of time. And this conversation now tends to answer the questions of why performance. And I think it was raised by George, who was saying, why do you think we need to carry out this performance? Secondly, is to judge the gap between the actual and the desired performance. So you have the actual and the desired. All of us in where we work, we had the 2020 targets. So as we are doing now this performance management, we are able to ascertain that there's a gap between what actually we've achieved vis-a-vis our targets. And that's where the need for performance management. Remember, performance management is not just doing the appraisal, but we are looking at that continuous process from January, even between January and March, maybe with the first quarter. Were you able to manage the performance so that whenever there's a deviation, you do what? You come up with corrective measures so that you don't wait in the middle of the year. Then you start talking about an issue that you'll have resolved in February, or you don't start talking about an error that was done in January, which will have been corrected, so that you don't find that the same error has been repeated over a period of time. So that's where this gap between the actual and the desired becomes handy. 3 is to help the management in exercising control. Now, this control is purely on the premise of understanding what you're doing, your role. Anytime they feel that you are not meeting the expectations, then they come in and do what? And control. Now, control can be in form of coaching, training, in terms of rewards, because you can control by rewarding people who have excelled. You can also control by what? Reprimanding those who have not performed. But that now you're looking at the negative reward, where now you try to make them see the essence of moving away from that poor performance. Another point is to help strengthen the relationship and communication between superior, subordinates, management, and employees. That relationship and communication. And that's why we say performance management should be continuous. Continuous in the sense that if I make an error today, just pull me aside and say, this one you did it wrongly, can you change? This client has complained. Can you deal with the client? Make sure that the client does not complain again. So that you don't wait for those moments of appraisal. And this is where we've always we've been advising our HR professionals and supervisors that don't wait for the moment when you're appraising somebody. That's when you start mentioning the things that they will have worked on. Because at that moment, you are not working towards improvement. Rather, it's like you want to punish them for something that maybe they did unconsciously and they have been repeating it. But if you have taken corrective measures at that particular point, then you will not be talking about the same person at this time. Another is to diagnose the strength and weakness of individuals to identify training and development needs for the future. Another one is to provide feedback to the employees regarding their performance. Of course, that feedback comes hand in hand with what I've mentioned. Also, it provides information to assist in other personal decisions in the organizations, and also provide clarity of the expectations and responsibilities of the functions to be performed by employees. I've talked about this clarity and expectation so that at the start of the year, I know what is it that I need to do. What sort of expectations are these? Are they within my understanding? Do I understand them? So that we don't end up having expectations that are not understood. So you're looking at me understanding exactly what are my expectations from this role. Another objective is to reduce the grievances of the employees. And you'll agree with me that grievances, they'll always touch on performance. They'll always touch on, you'll hear people complaining about being overworked. They'll complain about the colleague not being supportive. They'll complain about the supervisor not being supportive. They'll complain about the manager not being, all that. It will revolve around performance. So having a very objective performance management system, then it will reduce these grievances for the employees. Another objective is to judge the effectiveness of the HR function or the HR functions of the organization, such that, or in such areas like recruitment, training, and development. You're just able to see how effective have these functions been. Because when you recruited, then you must have recruited based on certain job descriptions and person specification. So if you got a person that meets those job descriptions as well as the person specification, then they should actually be able to fit into the training needs and also be able now to perform optimally as per your expectation. So that is in terms of those objectives. Let's see if there is any question up to that point before I move to the process. Is there any question or any observation with regard to objectives? You can see that for many, yes.
Is there a break?
Yes, there is.
At what time?
After the next slide.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, James.
Yes, how are you?
Fine, fine. The break is for how long? Because that was a good question. I was also thinking of the same.
For 10 minutes.
10 minutes, 15?
10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes. So that, in fact, it is what, 9:56. Or we can break, then we come back and start with the process. So we come back at 10:10. 10-11. Is that agreeable?
Yeah, that one is okay.
Good. Right, so we can have a break. You can stretch. But now that's part of the challenge with the online. You also need to check that your ergonomics, your sitting is okay. And like in normal training, whereby the environment tends to be flexible, you can stretch. I can say stand, rise up and stretch, and just sing a song. But now in this case, we must look at innovative ways of doing that. So you can stretch. You can, for those ones who are yet to have a cup of tea, you can do that. Then we continue again at 10-11. Okay, so let's have a break, and let's congregate again at 11 minutes past 10. I can see Harry is enjoying his breakfast. Okay, so let's we continue at 11 at 10 past 11 past 10. Maybe you can share with us the tea and the bread. You can share with us.
There.
Next question. Harry. Harry Arigi. You are still muted.
I can hear you now.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good.
I see you've enjoyed your breakfast now. Huh?
It was very fast. But
Yeah.
I've left a half to finish.
Oh, you've left a half?
Yes. I'm waiting for the next break.
Yeah. And then you continue.
The next break.
You complete the process.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that will be at around 11. So
no problem.
You complete that, then you wait for lunch.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think guys are back. We can proceed and complete the second bit.
Okay.
Merindetto, she's left as the background. And Mag is back. You can see Leonard is back also. Okay, Mary is back. I think we should be proceeding with the final session for today. So I think we stopped at objectives, and I said these are the objectives are as many as what the job requirement is, but these are just the generic ones that we can use now to inform us in terms of why do we carry out performance management. But of course, we'll have the specific ones when we are dealing with a particular role in a particular institution. Take an example of, I think it was who talked about the hospital environment. So you find that the hospital environment, that was Christoph, I think. So depending on the environment you're in, then also the goals and objectives that you have are the ones that will shape your objectives or your expectations from that particular role. Now, on the performance management process, this diagram, it shows the integration and the link of the activities that happen at each of the stages. And I want to just mention that this process is cyclic. Cyclic in the sense that at the moment you come to the end, the discussion you have at the end informs you the following stage. That means you go back to the initial stage of planning. And typically, look at the way every time you wake up in the morning, by the end of the day, you go back and sleep. And when you sleep, you're also anticipating that tomorrow you'll do what? You'll wake up. And you're always looking at waking up on a better day than today. Nobody expects to have a worse day the following day. We are always anticipatory saying that let tomorrow be better. Let things work out tomorrow. Whatever I've achieved today, let me achieve more tomorrow. So that analogy is similar to the way we do our performance. Because of whatever we've done today, we're always looking at improving them. We don't look at retrogressing, but rather we look at what? Progressing. And that's the typical illustration of this diagram. So on this process, at times we discuss it based on when you're watching the screen, you can see on the left-hand side, where we have the setting of standards, then measuring, comparing, discussing, and taking corrective action. But within the same, you can see we have the explanations on what happens at each of the stages. For instance, in the first stage, where we talk about setting and communicating performance standards, that's where we plan for performance. So we identify the targets, and we communicate. And we also communicate the performance goals, then we establish the criteria. Now, in this one, based on your appraisal that you have, you'll say, Mary, for example, your targets are this year, you need to achieve on customer satisfaction, we need to increase your satisfaction from 70% to 90%. Then we want to see, are you aware of that? Do you understand what is expected of you? Then at what point will it be measured? What criteria are you going to use? Are you going to use the customer satisfaction criteria as an index, for example? Are you going to use the internal assessments? What are you going to use? Now that's the performance criteria. So that from the onset, it's clear in your mind that I need to improve this. And this will be the measurement or the performance criteria. Now, when you move to measuring the standards, then also we need to understand up to what period are we going to measure this performance? What methods are we going to use? Then what is the responsibilities for this appraisal? What is the responsibilities of the person who is appraising me? And what will be the responsibility of myself in this whole process? So that when we have this clarity, then it does not deviate our minds. It doesn't distort our minds, whereby now sometimes you find people saying they're not sure what their role is, when this appraisal will be done, or when this needs to be done, and the methods that to be used. So understanding or having a clear understanding will make this process to be effective, and therefore it brings about that achievement or the optimal achievement of the targets and the expectations of that work. Then we have the comparing of standards. Now, comparison of standards. Now, this boils down to we call it as the grading, the performance grading, whereby you will say below 50 or below 40 to 49 or below that is poor or maybe average, 50 to that, the score. So when you have those scores, then they turn out to inform how you compare the standards, at what point. So then we begin the work vis-a-vis that comparison of those standards. Then we have now discussing the results. So if you have had a score of somebody through the appraisal, now they have scored 59, then now you need to appraise those results. How do you appraise the results? You look at the specific areas that have been excelled on and those areas that need what? Improvement. So as you discuss that, when you identify the areas that need improvement, then you now advise or you propose what? The corrective action. What sort of corrective action will be put in place, and for how long will this be done? And that's where now you institute some of the performance improvement plans that you may have, or also you do what? You look at what is it that you can put in the next appraisal process. So having done that, then you'll have rated, if this person is 59, of course you don't expect them to score less than 59 in the subsequent appraisal. So when you're now going back to form again the new set of standards, and you can see this diagram, it goes back now to planning the performance. You'll now plan the new performance for 2021, having considered the performance of 2020. Okay, so you've appraised the results, and now you are clear that this is the capability of, for example, Christopher. So based on that capability, then you now come up with a new the new performance goals for 2021. And as you do that, you also alive to the fact that we had some limitations that Christopher faced in the previous year. But now the question will be, how were those limitations handled? Okay. And moving forward, then, what sort of support do this person require to ensure that they perform to the expectation? And you can see on this other section, when you're going back to, when you examine the work and also you're comparing the standards, then we are looking at how are you ensuring that there is coaching, that's the management support, training and development. How is it done to ensure that this person continuously improves in their results? Then you're also anticipating what? Some of the things that you need to do. Now that's on when you're determining and appraising the methods, To avoid those limitations that who mentioned, that was Amos and I think Catherine, to make sure that you are very objective, then you need to understand what are some of the things that can make the appraisal to fail. What will make this process to fail? And we have a number of reasons that can make the appraisal to fail. One of them could be that the performance appraisal tool or the design of the appraisal tool is not objective. Meaning, you just adopted an appraisal from another organization, another department, and you want some of those indicators even do not apply, but you want somebody to be assessed on them. Now, that's where you find that appraisal method may not work. Secondly, it could be lack of objectivity now in the appraiser. Lack of objectivity. And that is informed by a tool that is not objective. Take an example. If you're working as a customer-facing employee, vis-a-vis somebody who is doing sales, the criteria within which you will allocate the scores for each of the indicators that you will be using will be different. But in the event that you are only having a common appraisal method, then that means the person at the reception vis-a-vis the person who is engaging clients and bringing the sales, the volume, will actually, one of the person at the reception is likely to be disadvantaged if you're basing your performance on what? On the volume or the sales that have been attained. That's where now you find now, employees now tend to feel that this tool is not what? Is not considerate. Unless now, what you need to do is you need to revise the tool so that some of the indicators, if somebody who is customer facing, for example, will have a higher score on issues to do with dealing with customer queries than somebody who is dealing with what? With the sales volume. So that now that variation is what will bring about the clarity and also the objectivity. But I've seen in most organizations, it's like we have a common template and we use it across, especially if the departments are not many, which now brings about, or it breeds this discomfort among the people. So that's what you need to ask yourself. As you've done that process, then you need to ask yourself, was this process effective? What are some of the challenges that came with the appraisal? That's what is very, very key when we are discussing about this performance management. Now, remember we talked about the role of the employee. In that process, if you feel that you as an employee, you feel that your work profile is not working very well, or you don't fit, or you don't have a work profile within the first month, then we're saying that you should meet and put together the work profile. Maybe you're not clear on what you're supposed to do. Then let the supervisor also understand the circumstances that you've been in that will have affected your performance. Then there is this aspect of periodic discussions. Now, one of the failures of performance management has been that we tend to make them so formal that people feel that it has to be a very formal way of managing performance, but that should not be the case. To achieve, actually, when you want to achieve the best out of your employees or your staff or your colleagues, don't make it so formal. Whenever you're doing this coaching and mentoring throughout, don't assume that it has to be an appraisal where you sit down and document and then do it, because that way, then you're only making it to be more of a corrective measure. But we need to see continuous support. We need to see continuous coaching and all that. And that can only be done if there is that even informal discussions about someone's work. Now, another thing that the employee is very significant is that if you disagree with the performance rating, then you have to look at the results that are not included in the evaluation. And remember that this is an evaluation of results, not activity. So we need to be very clear that it's not activities where you say, I went to the shop, I went to the market, I went to the event, or I did this. We must look at the results. Then discuss with your supervisor any questions you have about what is on the evaluation. And this is where we said the end justifies the means. So if from the initial times we did not have a sitting whereby we discussed and said, this year, this has been the performance. Subsequently, this is how our KPIs will be. If you don't have that kind of conversation, then it is what will bring about these issues of what the supervisor not agreeing with the staff, and the staff not agreeing with the supervisor because of lack of clarity on the metrics that we seek or we are utilizing. Then we also need to seek out a member of your HR department to discuss your results, meaning the results should not be a secret. The performance should not be a secret. And that can only work if it is subjective. Now, we normally have this confidentiality of this assessment, but in the event that somebody feels aggrieved, then that's why we say they can discuss those results and just try to think whether, first of all, are these results resonating with the expectations? Do we have a missing link between the expectation that was set initially and what is being assessed? In one of the meetings I've had with during my consulting, you hear cases of employees or staff saying that during the appraisal on things that they were not informed on early. So during the appraisal, you find that it's a whole mess, because here it's like you're trying to explain what you are measuring, but the employee does not understand, says that, no, this one is not, I didn't agree about this, I didn't know about this, I didn't know I'm going to be assessed on this. In that, usually we ask the line supervisors, when did you discuss this? Did you discuss this from the onset? Or have you just included some other things because of your failure to monitor performance? Because once you started the journey together, then it won't be a big deal at the end of it when you're doing the assessment. So it's always important that we do a joint consultation and agree on those expectations for the work. Now, I've talked about the appraisal. Then if you recall, we talked about performance of the organization and the employee. Somewhere here, let me just bring you to speed with what I was talking about. Assist in personal decisions about performance. Where is that? To understand the performance of the employee and the organization. So when you talk about appraisal, basically it hinges on the employee performance. But then this appraisal informs the balance scorecard. Now, the balance scorecard is that management tool that gives a comprehensive or a holistic measure of how this organization is progressing towards the achievement of the strategic goals. And we'll be looking at the different facets or the characteristics of this balance scorecard, whereby you'll find, as we look at these measures, the performance appraisal now of the employee is one of the tools that we use to do it, to achieve the balanced scorecard. Now, what does it entail? So this balanced scorecard, and maybe just to give a history, it was developed by Kaplan and Norton. And their purpose was, they had questioned how we can have a holistic understanding of the performance of the organization. Because at that moment, everyone was just looking at management by objective, performance appraisals, they're looking at performance contracts, but they felt there was a gap in terms of having a holistic view or a comprehensive understanding of how the organization can progress towards its strategic goals. And that's why they mooted this idea. They came up with this tool to assist firms, organizations to understand the different perspectives within which the performance of the organization can be interpreted. And that's why they came up with this balance scorecard, which tends to look at balancing between financial and financial measures. It also looks at the short and long-term measures. It also looks at the drivers of performance with regard to those outcomes that they are looking at, the outcome of the measures. Then they also say that this balance scorecard has a lot of data, which gives the complete picture of the organizational performance and no more. It's basically the complete view. And we'll be looking at those perspectives to just inform us on this. And also it leads to a strategic focus and organizational alignment. Remember I talked about the vertical integration. So that alignment will be, if you are, let's take an example of a quantifiable approach where you're saying we want to increase our profitability. This year we have a maybe profitability of 10%. Next year we want to move to maybe 40%. So this indication of 40% is now what should be part of what? The alignment. So you focus your organizational resources now towards the 40% profitability. I'm just picking one of the indicators. So based on this balance scorecard, then it informs that kind of direction to assist in determining what direction we should organizations take. Now, in brief or in summary, now this is what those four perspectives are. One, there is what we call financial perspective, where you are now assessing your profitability margins. This is where you look at the losses, you look at the financial health of the organization, you look at the income versus the expenditure, and you break down all those expenses and try to determine what are those expenses that have been blown overboard. What are these expenses that need to be contained? And what is your income line? What are the income lines that have not been satisfactory? So when you do that, then you are now able to get the general view of the organization from the financial perspective. Because remember now, the concept of regulator comes in because we are looking at if a company continues with losses for a period of time, then as a regulation, it needs to be declared. It becomes a going concern for that organization. Then we have now the customer perspective. Now, this customer perspective entails we carrying out customer survey, satisfaction survey, for example. We're looking at the customer satisfaction survey. We also have what we call the net value proposition for the customers, just to get to understand what is it that the customers value more for our organization. So that's when now you get the perspective of what your customers feel about your services, what do they feel about your processes, what do they feel about your products. Then we have the internal processes perspective, when I are looking at what are these processes that we are doing. Currently, people are looking at ISO certification, for instance. Now, when you have the ISO certification, the question you need to ask yourself, having attained that standard, are you able to maintain it? Are you able to meet the expectation? Do you still have the same problems that you are having yet you are ISO certified? Because that's now the questions customers will be asking you. But you are ISO certified, how come this process is taking so long and you are ISO certified? So that's where now you need to go back and ask you as an organization, then how are we doing this? Now, this may not necessarily only deal with the external, but also look at people that we work with. If in your policy, you are clear that your application for leave takes 24 hours, and here is a case whereby somebody has applied for leave, but there's no communication until the period has expired, then that's where there is a problem with what? Your business process, where now you need to review. How long do you even respond to queries from external clients? I've had in most cases, people grappling with this question whereby they'll say, you're taking like 2 days to respond to an email that was raised by a client. It could be a query, but how long do you take? Now that takes about the issues of what? Your processes. Are your processes seamless? Do you experience where customers have to complain and call and lament for you to deal with a query that they asked you? So if you realize that you're actually struggling to deal with customers until now you are labeling them as difficult clients, it means your internal business processes are leaking. They're not actually providing the right direction. So you need to review that. How long do you take to reply to queries. Now, now this is something I like raising with the professionals. If we are recruiting people, you have advertised, how often do we send even the regret letters or regret emails as HR? Because we've been saying we need to transform the HR profession. How often do we do that? When people have made applications, how often do you send that reply? Or whenever you do the interviews, you find that you only communicate with the person who was successful, but you don't communicate to these other people who qualified, but they didn't make it to get the job. And that's one weakness I've realized that most HRs do not do. Very few actually give a response. You know, you're always supposed to give that feedback. You always just give the feedback and acknowledge that they what? You thank them for making an effort to apply for this position, but they are not successful. That will not cost you a lot. But I find that we've this kind of courtesy is like we don't take it seriously. Yet it really affects our internal processes and the perspective that people have about us. Because you need to put yourself in those shoes. If you're the one who applied for that position, you went for the interview, and up to that date, you've never received any feedback. How do you perceive that organization? Do you think you'd be willing to apply for another position in the same organization if it's advertised? That's a question that I want you to ask yourself. So whatever you do, anything that you do, always look at it from, assuming it was me, how will I react? How will I feel if this kind of communication is not done? Then we have also the other concept of learning and growth. And the illustrations will be on the next slide. Now, learning and growth is basically the innovations that the organization has adopted. Have you digitized your processes? How are you now handling? Have you moved away from paperwork to paperless? Have you come up with a new innovation, maybe a new app for your clients, now that clients have now to use your app instead of having to call and all that to get their services? So all those are now the innovations and the learnings that you attain. And this is borrowed heavily from the continuous updating and upgrading of knowledge and capacities to meet the changing business needs. Right now, because of COVID, companies that were processing documents, there are those that immediately they shifted to what? To e-modes. We've had boards that have now moved to e-signatures, e-ratification of decisions. How fast has the organization been towards this kind of issue? If you find that you are able to respond towards the earliest time of this disruption, then you're actually on the right path of learning. But if to date, you're still trying to see when this COVID will end so that people can come and still do the processing physically, then you're not actually on the path of learning. So that's what we need to look at as we look at learning and growth. Have you had people now being trained? Have they been trained on how to do group work, or they are working on a project and it can go through the group project where, for example, that software whereby it monitors how long James has taken to make amendments of the project, and immediately it notifies the next person who is Mary, and you can see the chain of that flow. So you're able now to see, and at the end of it now, that informs you on the period that each one of them took and how the project, what period does the project take. Now that's where the kind of work that can be done through now this digitization. So those are the things that we need to understand. Now, when you'll be looking at importance of the balance scorecard, of course, it has all these functions: strategic planning, it's activity-based forecasting, benchmarking, market research. Those are the outcomes of these 4 areas. That through customer satisfaction, you can be able to benchmark, you can be able to set your new targets, you can be able to forecast, you can be able to re-engineer your processes, you can be able to empower people, you can be able to have self-directed teams. So these are just the results of an effective, balanced scorecard. Is there any question up to that point? Or any observation with regard to balance scorecard? Or maybe if I may ask, how many of us have adopted this balance scorecard in our organizations? Or it could, maybe you have another one. It's not a balance scorecard per se, but it is. It looks like this, but it's not a balance scorecard per se. Or do we have a general organizational performance? Or we only look at profit levels every year? Then that is it. We never look at other aspects of performance, because I believe the tendency has been to just report the profit and loss margins at the end of the year. And normally, rarely do you find a company saying, in terms of finances, this is how we grow. In terms of our processes, this is how, or the kind of milestones we've taken. In terms of learning and growth, these are the milestones. In terms of our customer satisfaction, this is what we've achieved. Have you had this kind of, or do you have this kind of arrangement within your organization? Yes, Mary?
I think most government organizations have adopted performance contracting as a tool for managing performance,
Yes.
which is basically draws a lot from the balanced scorecard.
Yeah. And I've seen actually it is it's automated. It's automated. Maybe that's something that you need to mention, that it's automated and you're able to track from the initial stage to the last stage. Thank you, Mary, for your input. Anybody else?
Yeah, my only concern is
Yes.
the resourcing aspect of it. That you can have very good targets, but resources are not allocated for the same.
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge has been resources, right? Where you have, so as you mentioned that you have the targets, or you have the clear targets, yes, but people lack, or sometimes you've had even some departments in government saying that they don't have the necessary human resource, but they have the targets to achieve. So at the end of it, you find that now you have a challenge. First, you don't have the right resources, and therefore even your outcome will not be objective. Because you have less people, or people with no skills, but you have your target already identified. Thank you, Mary, for your input. Then I can see Amos asking, how do we link agreed performance targets with organizational budgets and procurement plans? How do we link agreed performance targets with organizational budgets and procurement plans? And I think this, maybe before I respond, can somebody respond to it? And maybe it actually tends to link more from what Mary has talked about, and performance targets with organizational budgets and procurement plans, isn't it? I think it has a close link with what Mary was talking about, whereby, yes, you have the targets, but also you have a budget. But even the budget is limiting you. You are not able to have or to get the necessary resources or equipment to actually make you to achieve that. And also maybe this process of procurement, let's say you want to procure some resources, it takes time. You want to procure people, you want to procure equipment, it takes time. By the time even you're carrying out your performance, you don't have these plans. But anyway, what we need to look at is, or just to answer this question, maybe in a more objective way, is that you must always ensure that your targets are in tandem with your budget, so that you discuss it holistically. Let's say, for example, now that we are coming to the end, we have these companies that are doing their budgets now. We have others that will do their budgets starting in June, or their financial year starts in July. So whatever budgets that you have, let's say for those ones who are targeting for January, you're starting in January, then whatever budgets you have now must put into consideration the targets that you have, so that if you have a target that has gone above what you had this year, then you should ask yourself, if I was not able to achieve this with this resource that I have, so what sort of support do I need? What other resources do I need that will have made me to achieve this? So that now when you're coming up with a budget, you've considered that. It's part of your budget. So you budget for a resource or you budget for a particular support that you need to ensure that you achieve those targets. But at times you find that the budget has been approved. Then after it has been approved, then you start seeing people coming up with their individual plans later on. Yet it should actually originate from the lower level. We should see departmental projects, not projects budgets, in view of what sort of plans they have, so that now it informs the organizational budget. That way, then we'll be able to work in a more seamless way to achieve that. So thank you, Amos. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, I also have an observation on the PC targets.
Yes.
I work in an organization whereby it is a learning institution. So we have both the teaching and the non-teaching staff.
Yes.
I've had problems when it comes to appraisals.
Yes.
The PC is supposed to set the targets, but
Yes.
you find that it is more of paperwork than now practical. So when you're doing the appraisals, you find that it is hard. You don't know, okay, there are no targets to appraise someone on. So it ends up being it is something that you just do it because it is supposed to be done.
Yes.
Okay, which also brings the issue of staff complaining, like they are being appraised and they are not given feedback.
Yes.
So the PC is not up to the task. I don't know if it is in our organization or mostly in more organizations they are doing the same. So if it is a function that is integrated, you find that the other part of it now, the HR section, suffers more because of the lack of them being up to the task.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that observation. That's a learning institution, huh?
Yes.
So in other words, what you're saying is that the targets originate from the top.
Yes.
And there's no synergy with the lower level. So ideally, what is at the top should be just the strategic goal. But now when it comes to how that should be achieved, those are the things that should be developed at the functional level. Otherwise, if it's not happening at the functional level, that's when now you find people complaining that whatever I'm being, this is not what I've been working on. People will always, they will ask, actually you hear them complaining that you're assessing me on something that I don't do. And you've actually omitted things that I normally do. And they'll actually take you to task to justify why that, whatever you're doing, the performance contracting is working or not. So it could be, I don't know now, in terms of when you discuss the results, you as a HR, is there, from where now you've provided proposals on how well it can be done, or maybe provided and it's not being considered? But I think that's another conversation that if you can have it and say, from the feedback, this is how employees are responding, and we feel that whatever they do has not been captured. So can we have functional level plans that can be integrated with the main one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially with that, now you have the academic and administrative. I know the two assessments have to be different, because while academic, the indicators will be more on research, students, supervision, and the rest. For administrative, now it will be more of the processes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think now that one, I don't know whether now you have the two sets whereby now they speak to each other or not. If that's not the case, then that's when now the challenge comes in.
Okay, it is a challenge because I think it is a lot of work, and you find that people don't like working.
Yes.
So they would prefer it being like that. And we keep on doing the same things and expecting different results, of which we don't get.
Yeah. You want to maintain the status quo.
Yes.
Mary has a comment.
In terms of now staff appraisal, even if it is administrative, it depends on what administrative duties we perform.
Yes.
To assist in the achievement of the higher goals. We have just talked about procurement, for example. If we don't procure on time, projects on time, your targets is procurement of goods and services. So if we don't procure on time, then the organizational goals are not achieved in time. The same thing with HR, the same thing with customer satisfaction. So it depends on how well staff understand their role in achieving the higher targets. How well do we cascade those higher targets to the lowest person so that they understand what their roles are?
Yes, thank you, Mary, for your comment. I think you've just highlighted that it's important to have the cascading bit, so that if I'm working as a, for example, in the office as an administrator, then I should be having my targets that are actually inclined towards the overall goal of the organization, so that at the end of it, we are all working to synergize our efforts to achieve the common goal of the organization. But so that's the what can make it to be effective. But failure to do that, if we just have a uniform component, then you find that people will always say that they are not feeling their effort. They don't see their contribution anywhere. And that's where frustrations will come in and people will feel that this thing is just done for formality purposes. And you see, it also boils down to your career development, because you now feel that however much effort I'm putting in, it seems that this effort, I'm not able to track it, or I cannot see any sort of career direction that is taking place with me. Then I think the other earlier comment was that in that organization, in that institution, there's a lack of clarity in terms of what things need to be done administratively, what indicators administratively, what indicators academically, so that at the end of it, we are looking at growing that institution to higher targets that it has set. So thank you for that input. Do you have any other question? If there's none, then I just want to indicate some of the measures that we have under each of those perspectives. There's a chart, is how effective is 360 performance appraisal? Has anyone tried this? Did it work? That's from Catherine Nyangai to all. How effective is 360-degree performance appraisal? Has anyone tried this? Did it work? That's a question to all of us. If you've used 360 degrees feedback, how effective was it? Did it work? Will you advocate for it, or it has its own challenges? So as we ponder to respond to that, this slide just gives how we can, the measures for customer perspective, for example, where we have customer satisfaction survey, the gap analysis, that means satisfaction versus the level of importance, satisfaction distribution, percentage of each area scored. So here you'll have your indicators and you look at each area. Maybe you're looking at, in terms of PR, what is the score? In terms of customer inquiries, what is the score? In terms of the processes, what would be the score? So that's now the percentage under the customer satisfaction distribution. Those are just the measures. If it's financial, you look at the cost of the budgets, the projections, the cost per unit, then funded requirements of the project. This is where we talked about whether you have a budget for resources or projects which you've not been able to achieve. Do you attribute that to lack of finances that you are not able to hit that target? On internal perspective, how long does it take to deal with an inquiry? How long does it take to process a document? How long does it take to utilize certain timelines? How long does it take to undergo or to undertake a transaction per employee, and also the errors or the rework? Now that works with when people are dealing with the work or documents or they're writing reports. To what extent do you experience errors? If they're dealing with manufacturing, what is the percentage of these errors? Then on learning, the satisfaction, retention, technology investment, training hours, and resources. So those are just some of the measures that we can employ to capture these, the balance scorecard. So I just identified them because we may be using them now in our own sort of appraisals or in our performance management, but you find that they are not classified as the balance scorecard. But you find that sometimes we look at all these to inform our decision making. So can we have somebody to respond to that question from our friend here who said, was asking whether 360-degree performance appraisal is effective. Anyone who has employed this technique?
Maybe I can just chime in. This is Sally. I attempted the 360-degree performance appraisal, and I actually faced quite a bit of resistance, especially from the more senior staff with the personnel mindset, looking at it more, looking at appraisal as a bad thing, as something to you need evidence to sanction people. So I faced quite a bit of resistance on that. Yeah, so I'm having to do a sort of integrated one, the more subordinate people we can discuss and we tell them, and maybe we are more open to having 360. But especially for the senior staff, I've had quite a bit of a challenge on that.
Okay, thank you, Sally, for your input. So Sally has faced a challenge, especially for the senior staff to accept that it's a measure it's a tool that can be used to assess their performance. But I think they don't want to be seen in a bad light. They want to have that element whereby maybe they are not able to meet the demands of the external clients or the perspective of their other colleagues, the staff within that setting. Thank you, Sally, for your observation. Catherine, you can see the hurdle that our other HR professional has faced. Anybody else to share their? Yes. Anybody else with a similar view or a contrary view? Okay. So silence means either we've utilized it or we've not utilized, but that's the situation. I think it's also imperative to note that human beings are very averse. They're very averse to comments from the holistic view, because somebody will say, my work is not to please clients, or my work is not to please employees. I'm not here to please anyone, but provided I've been able to achieve my volume, my financial indication or my financial targets, then I'm good to go. Without looking at also how the relationship with others will impact even on the revenue that you're looking at. Because usually, I think people have that narrow mind in terms of not looking at other factors that can actually impact heavily on the revenue. The focus has been so short-sighted when it comes to finances. Right. All right. So then we have these targets we've talked about, how we need to have the target set and how that can be incorporated in the appraisal. Now, another thing that is important when you look at targets are the initiatives. The initiatives. And usually the percentage within which we allocate initiatives depends also on the organization and how that role is, because sometimes we look at some percentage, others will say financial perspective is this much, then the other initiatives is this much. Because you'll actually agree with me that through the initiatives, then you are able, if you have clear initiatives and your effort can be seen, then you find that it contributes heavily, and you can track your success as you look at the targets. So there are measures that are used to determine the effectiveness of the strategic initiatives. Now, significance of performance management. I think this borders well with also the objectives. Because when you carry out that, you give feedback, you measure the objectives, you encourage work, you help to point out the needs, you help decide compensation, career planning, and the rest. So as we come to the end, there is this characteristics of performance management in organizations, where we are looking at how do we manage learning, how do we manage performance targets, the ownership, who owns the process, and also we are looking at the intrinsic and extrinsic motivators that can inform this process to be successful, because the integration of that, the alignment of the same is what will inform a strategic focus to success. So for example, all those can be informed by now, the mission, vision, the strategies, and the measures. This is what in itself is the main driving force behind the strategic performance management system. And we can do that if we have a strategic direction whereby we create the environment for change. Now, this strategic direction means that as we look ahead, looking ahead means we need to shape our processes, we need to shape our minds, we need to shape the skills to resonate with the direction that we want to take. After we do that, then we communicate the strategies. We define the objectives and we implement that balanced scorecard. That's now how this system will work. Then as we implement the balanced scorecard, then we are measuring the performance and improving the processes. Then lastly, we are evaluating and adjusting the performance. So when we do the evaluation, that's where we are looking at the continuous improvement and redefining these initiatives. So this basically is that performance management system. So it borrows from the performance management process to create the system. And you can see the system ends at what? Evaluating and adjusting. Now, after you evaluate and adjust, you again go back to the new what? Strategic direction. So the performance management process and all this will always be cyclic and also integrated in so many ways. Now, to achieve performance management, there has to be what we call organizational capability. Capability can be discussed in terms of high performance management, the high commitment, and high involvement. High performance, high commitment, and high involvement. When you have these three components integrated, then you're able to achieve this performance. And you'll do that because through high commitment and involvement, you'll build trust. And as you build trust, you're encouraging change, and through that, you're also using the appropriate measures to achieve that. Then this brings us to this last bit, which is now the difference between management, performance management, and appraisal. And on these two categories, you'll find that appraisal is more of individual objectives, while organization objectives denote what? Performance management. Performance management, it covers both outputs and inputs, that the competencies. While on appraisals, we only have those aspects of what? Performance objectives may also be included. Then it's annual under appraisal, while this one is all round, it's continuous. Management may not have ratings because remember we talked about the different perspectives like learning and growth. So that way you may not clearly rate and say learning has been 20% or 30%. But usually appraisals have that rating. The other argument has been that appraisals are backward looking. So you're doing an appraisal in November and you're asking this person they didn't perform well in June. That's backward looking. But with the management is forward looking, because we said you must continuously monitor and provide corrective action. The other one, appraisal also focus on levels of performance, while this one focuses on what? Development. Appraisal is top down, management is joint. Top down in the sense that I think one of us mentioned that they receive instructions from the top, but it should be a joint process. Management should be a joint process. Monolithic system, that means it's very rigid. The appraisal as per the indicators that are there, while management is a flexible process. Appraisal is tailor-made, also this one is tailor-made. Then paperwork is minimized in management and all that. So those differences, I think we can read for ourselves. So as we conclude then, when we come up with goals in each of those, then these goals must inform where the company is heading. The company will now define these goals to each employee. Then each employee should now shape their own individual goals and efforts towards that. And having done that, then they must ensure that they are smart. Your goals should actually be smart, that will guide now the kind of efforts that you're looking at. And that's where we look at this as the SMART objectives. How do you fit in the overall organization objectives as well as your own objectives as an individual? And that brings us to these performance criteria, which I've already mentioned, where you look at acceptable levels that will inform both acceptable and unacceptable levels that can inform how you're going to measure the performance. Hence, this criteria will be critical on job analysis. It also defines the criteria that is important to standard by which to compare good behavior. This just resonates with what we talked about at the onset. And you can see that predictors are what the company looks for in an individual while hiring, and criteria is the evidence of a good employee. And also it's important to know that there is always a gap observed between the theoretical or ideal criteria versus the actual criteria. So this is just, they're speaking more on that criteria that we've talked about. So ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our module 1. And there is a question here. That's Faith Neika says, I work in a family business and performance management is driven by the owners and how well they like someone, and sometimes you have to let go an employee whose performance is good because they don't like the person. Kindly advise. That's a very thorny one. I work in a family business and performance management is driven by the owners and how they would like someone, and sometimes you have to let go an employee whose performance is good because they don't like the person. Kindly advise. Any advice from the professionals here? How would you advise Faith in this predicament? Because she has a very challenging situation here. How do you advise her in such a situation? Because I'm sure anybody else who works with a family business here is facing the same challenge.
I think it takes time to inculcate the performance culture in a family business.
Yes.
But we must do it professionally until the owners, until the culture is accepted.
Yes.
If the family business is going to go far, then there are some values that the organization must adopt.
Very true. Very true, Mary. Anybody else with an additional comment?
Maybe just it's actually quite a tough one necessarily. But in such a case, especially because Faith says the performance is good, I'm wondering, do they have an issue with their attitude? They have, I don't know what the issue would be with that member of staff, because if someone is performing and they're bringing results, and yet maybe they reaches a situation where they have to be let go, is it their attitude? I think for HR, more and more, we now need to have also emotional intelligence, because we are expected to also manage our seniors. In a way where they don't realize they're being managed. Something like that, like we need that emotional intelligence. But maybe just check also with the employee, if you can just speak to them, if it's their attitude, they put it in check. Because for most of these family-run businesses, I'm surprised, because if there's performance, maybe it's the employee's attitude. Just wondering.
Yeah, maybe Faith can. Maybe Faith, you can actually share with us whether was this employee let to go because of attitude issues, or just lack of, or somebody just not liking them. You can unmute yourself. Faith, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, hey everyone.
Yes, how are you?
I'm very fine.
Yeah.
To clarify, it's not a matter of attitude or anything that the staff has an issue. So that when times you just wake up in the morning and you're told we are not able to continue working with this person and you're not given any reason. Then sometimes when you dig down, you just find that they don't like the person. Yeah, because now it's a family business. The co-founders are the parents, the directors are the wife and the husband. And sometimes it's just difficult to make a decision. So you let go someone without even a clear fact, like we are letting you go because of this and this.
That's a serious case. So now you as I'm assuming now you as a HR, do you provide any? Do you try to actually justify that? Because sometimes it has to be, from experience, one has to be very tactful in handling same and always working within the ambit of the law, reminding ourselves of possible repercussions, mostly as processes. Mind you, it's not usually a win-win situation, definitely not a very conducive environment. Yeah, in fact, that's very good from Sheila. You have to be very tactful in handling the same situation, because I'm not so sure whether, are you the one who was signing that letter? Because if you sign the letter, that means you are actually justified in making that kind of action. And that's where now this tactfulness comes in. Because also, I know you also want to protect your job, but you must be tactful so that as much as they may not take your ideas, but you've advised them on that and the repercussions that awaits the organization. Patrick Munu has said, HR need to educate the owners of the importance of good HR practices. The staff also need to be advised on the company, owners, e.g. performance and conduct expectations. Thank you for that input. So Faith, I think you have a very key role, because as I've said, we normally have this kind of challenges, but what we advise professionals is that you need also to ensure that any time you are faced in this situation, you have to engage or to apply a lot of tact. You need to just advise, and usually that advice is very key, so that at the end of it, in your mind, you feel that you advised, though now the boss did not look at it, but at one given point, they'll come to realize the repercussion that will happen to them, especially when people are just dismissed wrongfully, like in this situation.
Yeah, I agree with you totally, in that you really need to strike a balance.
Yes.
Whereby really need to strike a balance whereby even if they ask you to offset somebody who has been very good in performance, advise the owners of the company that this person's performance has been this and this, and even if you let him go, at the end of it, maybe we are going to have gaps here and there. So ask them to reconsider their decision, if possible. Then if they persist that this person really has to go, then probably you should have done your best. And with time, if anything goes wrong, you not have portion of the blame at the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you for that input. Thank you very much.
I think also the terms and conditions of the work also determines how someone can be let to go.
Yes.
Either maybe if it is on contract basis or permanent basis, because you can't just wake up and say someone is supposed to leave today and it is he or she is on a permanent employment. So maybe the terms and conditions of the job is not well defined.
Very true. Faith, because in fact,
I agree with you with that. The lady was just spoke, but you know, most of these family businesses, things of contract are not always never there. Yeah, you just have a verbal agreement, verbal contract. Just the way you came in, the way probably you may go out. If you don't know how to agitate for your rights, maybe knowing how to go to the labor offices to address your issues. So either permanent or contract or anything else, most of these family business do not have things of contract, you see.
But to me, I think there is a problem, because if they have hired a professional, that is Faith, who is a human resource practitioner, then Faith should guide them on how to come up with these clear ways of doing things.
Yes.
Maybe that one will maybe safeguard on the part of the employees.
Very true. In fact, there's a comment from Sally who says, give your advice in writing, even if on email. Then Faith says all employees are on 1 year contract. Yeah, they're on 1 year contract. So then I think also whenever people are on contract, there is a way in which they need to be, or the contract need to be terminated. There has to be those, we call it as what? The clauses that inform what sort of notice should be provided and all that, which I think Faith should be better placed now to advise the management on how the best practices should be upheld to that effect, so that you don't just wake up and fire somebody on phone. I've had cases whereby somebody says they received an SMS that they should not report to work, and that was it, which is actually outside the precepts of the law. Right, so thank you very much. Any other comments as we come to the end? Okay, Faith has said that, yeah, they usually advise. Yeah, they have advised, and owners have connections when they go to courts. Okay. Now that's a tough one when it comes to integrity, ethics, professionalism. So thank you very much, guys, for participating and making this happen today and the success of the session. So I want to thank you very much. And Sheila says when it comes to separation employees, use all employees equal in the process. So thank you very much. I want now to hand over to Den to guide us. Den, over to you.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you for taking us through the performance management day 1. This training runs for 2 days. That is today is Wednesday. No, today is Thursday and Friday. Yeah, I don't know why I still think that today is Wednesday. So we have this training for 2 days, and by the end of the day, we shall be able to have covered the whole content on performance management. So ladies and gentlemen, maybe you can put your video on so that you see who is present and who disappeared during the training. That is my only way. That is the only way I confirm that you actually participated in this training. Salim Malova? Yes, very good. And Yeah, you know, it looks beautiful when you put your video on. At least we cannot give one another corona when we are using this platform. Ama
That's
namna
true.
gani? Yeah, at least we can see one another. It's a very good way of interacting and networking, where we are able to say,
Dan, I
where we
think
are.
I'm present, but I'm not able to. I'm not able to unmute my video, but I'm present. This is
Okay.
Emily Saina.
Yeah, Emily Saina, thank you.
Yes.
Now, one other thing that I want to point out, that next time we are having a training, it is important you put your real name so that when the trainer is going through or wants to interact with you, they're able to call out your name, and you are able also to note that this is not a spam bot that is participating in the training. So some very fast announcements. Number one, our 2020 Annual Industrial Relations Summit is coming up on 8th to 10th December 2020 at Lake Naivasha Resort. Lake Naivasha Resort, Meridato, you would agree with me, it is a 5-star facility that is able to observe all Ministry of Health COVID-19 protocol. Actually, corona haiwezi pita kwa gate kwa sababu the way they screen anyone pooping in there iko kwa class yake peke yake. So you're welcome. The number of those who've confirmed is very good. The training is on, and you are all welcome to participate. The training is NITA reimbursable. Why do I say that? Between now and then, that is between now and 8th, you've got ample time to apply for NITA reimbursement and NITA approval for your training. If you've got any challenges with NITA approval, I would urge you to let me know when you've put in your applications. Then I'm going to intervene for you. I've learned over time creating good rapport with these government institutions pays big dividend, pays big time, especially when you want to have something move forward for your people. So take note. And by the way, going out is also very good. Maybe let me show you something. Then let me show you something.
Uhambe nami zungangishilana Jerusalema
1, 2, 3, 4.
So let me see. Were you? Are you? Are you able to see that?
Yes,
I
we
don't
are.
know whether you were able to view the video.
Yeah, though it was breaking.
Oh, it was breaking. That is what that is what we do at times. At the start of every conference or summit, we usually do that. That makes the people or the participants bold. Is it bold or bored? It makes people bored together, open to one another. By the time the training is over, some people have become very good friends. And last time I saw somebody meet alisema namna gani? The lady works at Parliamentary Service Commission. These are the lady works from another government organization. Then they say the last time I saw her was when we were in Form 6, 34 years ago. So they were able to meet there. It was a very good reunion. Miridato, that is true? Unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
Yes, yes. They confirmed that they were colleagues in high school.
34 years ago.
Yes.
And it was a very happy reunion. And I think, James, you are also there. I can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Even me, I was there.
Yes, I was there.
Oh, Hale, you are there?
Yeah.
Unmute yourself.
I was there. I was there. I was there.
Wonderful, wonderful. So
Yeah.
This is what we are promising during the 2020 Annual Industrial Relations Summit. Make your application, send us your nomination. If your organization is a NITA level contributor, again, do your application. Let me know you've done that. I'll help you do the follow-up. My number is 0722 300 245. This training, the performance management training, is a 2 CPD training. And I hope by now, most of us wamemaliza mambo ya CPD points. The cost for this training was 3,000. If you attend another training, we'll carry over your CPD points to next year. So don't worry. So ensure you attend as many of our trainings as possible. For those who are not able to navigate through our e-learning portal, I want to demonstrate how it works. I'll take 5 minutes only, then we'll call it a day for today. Please allow me to share my screen. You are supposed to go to achlp.org. achlp.org. I hope you can be able to see that. Can you? Then you put
Yes,
in
can be able to see.
achlp.org. If you have an account, you go to the client area on the right hand side and log in. If you are not on this portal, if you've never created your account on this portal, there is a link at the bottom that shows register new account here. That is where you enter your details. It takes less than 20 seconds to do that. If you have an account like myself, you'll put in your email and password. And most times, if you're using your laptop, remember to tick this part, remember me. If you're not using your laptop, if you're in a cyber cafe, don't remember me there. Otherwise, you'll be having other people signing into your account and going through your materials. But since I'm using the laptop, I've put remember me there, and oh, let me see. I've put my remember me there, and there I am. The moment you log into your account, it takes you to the take courses page, whereby if you're able to see that, the first column allows you to select the course. There you are. And since I had not enrolled for this particular course, I've checked the box on the first column for performance management. It will show me the amount payable at the top there. The M-Pesa pay bill number is there. The account number is my ID number. Then after I've done the payment, I'll get the M-Pesa transaction code, which I would be required to enter. I'll be required to enter where it is indicating enter transaction ID. So there we go. I'm entering my transaction ID. So I'll say that is my transaction ID. But ensure the transaction ID you enter is a real one. A transaction ID can either be an EFT code, the check number, or the M-Pesa code. So this is my M-Pesa code. Many people usually put in the ID number there. No, put the M-Pesa code so that I'm able to approve your course. So there we go. You click submit. And if you've followed those steps, you will find a message at the top there showing your enrollment was successful. Upon confirmation of the transaction ID, you will be able to view course materials, print receipt, and download certificates when due. So I go to admin, and I've logged into admin there. I'll find that I have 12 pending approvals for me to deal with. And among them is mine and others. So let me approve mine first. But since I've not done any actual payment, and I don't want this one to interfere with arithmetic, I've put zero amount there because I didn't pay anything. So I've approved that training, and if you check my screen, the pending approval for Dan Peters is no longer there. So if I go to my account, it was indicating pending for presentation, pending for receipt, and pending for certificate. I click my courses again. I'd look at that. For presentation, it is green now, and for receipt, it is green. So I can click view presentation at any time. Then on the left panel, this is where you find the webinar link. You see the trainer's name, the webinar link, the webinar ID, the webinar password. The YouTube video is there. But now I'll upload this YouTube video immediately we are through with this training. So it will be playing on this part. But in the meanwhile, the notes for the presentations are there. This is what James was taking us through. You are able to move from previous page, next page, like that, until the end. Look at that. You are able to go to the materials from this portal. So So there we are, and you can be able to edit your profile at any time. That's my profile. And when you put in your photo, it looks even better. Ensure that your ID is set, your IHLN number is set, your telephone number is set. Choose whether you are a full member at IHLM or an associate member. Your organization. This helps when you want to print an invoice. Your title, your country, that comes in handy. So this portal has 3 menus that are mostly that you would interact with most of the times. The number one is the take courses menu, where you can take our courses at any time. You can take our courses at any one time. So far, we have done 121 courses since we began, 121 courses. Then there you are, you can be able to add, if you've taken a course, it will show the sign taken. You can't take that course again. Courses where you can check the box, these are the courses you've not taken, so you can be able to choose those courses. And this is an online, this is an e-learning portal. You can take these courses at any time, at any one time. And the certificate will be dated the day you have taken the course. Any of our past courses, unless now you want them to earn you CPD points, at which point you would contact me so that I'm able to do my back-end gig, so that the certificate will be dated the date of the training. So if you are missing CPD points and you're not able, say, to attend the annual industrial relations summit, you can choose from any of our past courses there. Then you'll see what happens. But contact me before you do that. So we have a dashboard at the top there that shows you the number of CPD courses you've taken in the year 2020, the number of CPD points you have accumulated. I have 39 CPD points. You can download the CPD activities record form. Then you can get your merged certificates by clicking download verification. Those will be the CPD certificates. And this you can do for any year you have attended any of our training. Just check that. This is the year 2020, I have 22 courses. In the year 2019, I had 20 courses. You see the number have changed. And in the year 2018, I had 23 courses. That's how it works. And if I click on this form, download record, this is the form that you are supposed to take to IHRM at the end of the year. It is already completed for you with every detail. The only thing you will do is to sign and send to IHRM. And I don't know what else to say. So with that,
Hello, Dan. Hello.
yes,
I have a concern.
yes.
I printed my certificates and the dates of the training indicated 12. That was the last day we had our training in Naivasha. I thought the certificate could, could capture from the first day to the last day. Like ours was from 10th to 12th.
No problem, no problem. That concern is taken, it will be dealt with.
Okay.
Someone else?
Mine is just to thank you and thank James for the good facilitation. And the training was very interactive. Thank you.
Very good, very good. Let's move on to someone else. Yes. So, are you able to view all our trainings for free, including past trainings, on our YouTube channel? So, I'll share the YouTube channels with you before the end of the. Very good, very good, very good. In fact, I was having a challenge trying to stop. Wow, I was having a challenge trying to stop the share button, so I've sweat a little bit. But then those are the challenges with ICT. If you have any questions, you can, as we've agreed, reach me on my telephone number. That is the ACHLP number, AC, that is 0722 300 245. Let's chat. If you're not in any of our WhatsApp groups, let me know. Then I'll add you on that group, on an active group. If you're not on our Telegram link, again, I'll also add you. Today on sharing best practices with one another. So thank you very much. See you tomorrow. We'll start at exactly 8:30 in the morning. Then we have a class on Saturday, the transactional leadership. So again, you are welcome to participate in that training. Wangui Washira, I can see you, Emily Saina, Anne, Catherine, Beatrice Amugune, Kathy, Patrick Munuhe, Sally, Emily, Wangui, yeah, you are Catherine Nyangai, very good. Kwaheri.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.